Hey, it's Mike from The Mike Wagner Show. Thanks for tuning in to The Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM. If you're interested in sponsoring my show, you can send me an email to themikewagnershow@gmail.com, or you could also donate to the podcast. Just go to the Donate Listen site, and you can also donate whatever you like. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. For those who are interested, Anchor can give you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. We've got creation tools, allows you to record and edit podcasts so it sounds great, and they'll distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Google, many more. And you can make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. So download the Anchor app for free or go to Anchor FM to get started.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and more. Also on Stitcher, Deezer, and other platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. You can also listen to the Mike Wagner Show on your iPhone, smartphone, Android, and your Alexa as well, too. You can say, play the Mike Wagner Show, and Alexa will be glad to do so. We're here with a wonderful author who grew up in rural Wisconsin, now in Illinois, and he's got a trilogy out as well, too. It is very exciting, and he talks about the life of Emmett Casey growing up in inner Chicago, fighting in Vietnam, and this is a very special project that's very dear to him, and he's going to explain why it's so important as well. It's a trilogy, basically, from child to father. He's a physician, veteran, son, and father, and just a very special guy. You're going to love enjoying him. Live from the great Midwest, and here he is, Dr. Mike Nelson, best known as author Michael Deeze. Mike, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here, Mike. Thank you for asking me.
Well, that's not a problem. So you grew up in rural Wisconsin, and you're living in Illinois, and you've got a very interesting trilogy, and you've got 3 books on Amazon right now called Bless Me, Father, For I Have Sinned, and The Heretic, and you're also part of the Legacy Project, and why it's important as well, too. We'll talk about your 3 books as well, too, and one of them will be coming out in 2020. And before we get to some of your books and the Legacy Project and the life of Emmett Casey, tell us how you got started as an author.
Well, I've worked as a physician for the last 36 years and retired in June. And I was talking to my family a little while back, and when my father was close to the end of his life, he gave us his diary. And the diary that he gave us was really a compendium of all of the missions he flew as a tail gunner on a B-17 Flying Fortress bomber. And it was something he would never talk about when we were growing up. We would always ask him, what did you do in the war, Dad? Did you, do this? Did you do that? And he always told us the same thing, which was, if you have to talk about it, you probably weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gave us the diary, it is absolutely a hair-raising account because it's just the facts. And because he was emotionally distant his whole life, if we had been able to get that document from him, it would have given us so much insight into who he was as a person and as a boy, and we would have understood him much better.
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking about that because I came to being a parent later in life, in my late 30s, and I had lived several lives, I thought, before that. And I wanted my children to understand why I was like I was, and how I made decisions, and why I was kind of a nut job as far as they were concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started writing short stories about events in my own life. And I showed them to a few people, magazine editor for one, and they said, this would make a great novel if you strung those together in a straight line. So I started writing them, but I wasn't comfortable about writing about myself if I was going to make it into a novel. And so I took episodes from my own life and episodes from other people's lives, and I put them together in a long novel that follows a boy from his early ages to the man, to the father, and then the third book, The Heretic, takes him beyond that and into his professional life and documents his entire life and his family over those 3 books.
Mm-hmm. That is something as well, too. And he talked about Emmett Casey growing up in inner Chicago. Would you be that Emmett Casey as well, too, or did you string some of the experiences forming the life of Emmett Casey, and what was he like?
I was born in Chicago at Cook County General Hospital in the early 50s. My parents lived in a one-room apartment with no window at the time, they having moved there right after the war to find work and for my father to go to school. So we were poor and we knew it. And when they put the Eisenhower Expressway into the city, they relocated all of the people so that they could do the construction. And they built some of the first projects that were ever built in Chicago. The one we lived in was Maplewood Commons, which later became what was known as Cabrini Green. It was a tough neighborhood, and there was quite a bit of ethnic diversity. And so you either grew up quick and mean, or you didn't grow up at all.
Mm-hmm. That is something.
So the answer is yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, the answer to your question is yes. I was that boy at first. And so a lot of those stories come straight from my own experiences.
Mm-hmm. And also, what was the decision for you to join the Army? Were you drafted, or was just you joined just to find out what's about, or other reasons, or anything like that?
I was not against the Vietnam War. I wasn't for it either. I was a dumb kid in high school for the most part, so there were a lot of political discussions, but I was ambivalent about my own participation. And, you know, on one hand, of course, you wonder if you'd be any good at it, and on the other hand, you really don't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took at that time, I graduated from high school in 1969, and you had 2 choices at that time. Your career paths either were join the Army or wait for the Army to come and get you, which was almost a sure thing, or go to college so you could get a 2S classification.
Mm-hmm.
I took the easy way, and I went to college. But I didn't take it very seriously because apparently you have to attend classes in order to pass the exams. And I spent much too much time discovering the wonders of alcohol, and soon lost my 2S status and was drafted.
Mm-hmm. That is something as well, too. And, of course, how long have you served in the Army, and what rank did you end up in terms of honorable discharge?
I did get an honorable discharge. I served 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days.
Okay.
I exited as an E5, specialist E5.
Okay. And how about your dad? Where did he finish in terms of honorable discharge?
Dad came out as a corporal in 1946. After honorable discharge, the life expectancy of a tail gunner at the time was 5 missions. He flew 26.
Wow.
So he, according to the diary, but he flew 26 times over Europe. But the rule was back then you had to fly 25 in order to rotate back to the States. But they threw a caveat in, and the caveat was if you missed your target, if you dropped your bombs but they didn't hit the target, it didn't count as a mission. If you had engine trouble over the target, or if you got shot to pieces over the target and couldn't make your run, you didn't get credit for the mission either.
Wow.
And so he flew far more than 26 missions, but most of them did not count.
Oh, wow. I guess that had to be tough trying to make quotas and everything else. It sounds like the Army back then was a lot tougher than it is now. That's what it sounds like.
Well, the statistics are that in the war over Europe, the Army Air Corps wasn't an Air Force yet. The Army Air Corps lost 100,000 men, which was more than all of the Marines killed in the Pacific during the entire war. So the problem was that it took a whole year to train up a crew, for a bomber crew, 10 men. And they couldn't afford to keep rotating them in because they were losing them as fast as they were getting them in from the States. My dad went in when he was 17, and they immediately tagged him to be a tail gunner because he was only 5'5" and only weighed 125 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So he fit on the tail. The tail gunner had to take his parachute off and crawl on his belly down the tail of the plane in order to get into his turret. And so if a plane was shot down, the only guarantee was the tail gunner wasn't going to make it because he had no parachute.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a horrible job, but he got it after a year's training, and they couldn't afford to lose the crews by sending them back to the States in one piece. So they kept raising the quotas and finding creative ways to not count missions.
That is something as well, too. And, of course, in the book, Bless Me, Father, as well, too, that you also had to, go through some trials as well, too. And also, there was also some things about PTSD as well, too. And were there any traces of that in your dad and in your book as well, too, with some PTSD and some of the episodes?
I think my father spent his whole life suffering from PTSD. There are portions in his diary, which is an incredible document because he hand wrote it, and then in later years he still had the photographs and other paraphernalia. But when he decided to give it as a gift to his children, he took it out and wrote it in pencil so that he could correct it, and then painstakingly traced the pencil in ink before he gave it to us. But the stories themselves are just ridiculous experiences for an 18-year-old kid. We lost both waist gunners today. I helped carry them out of the plane. Were shot up so bad that I could put my head through holes in the side of the plane. Came in with no landing gear today. Had to go belly in the dirt along the runway. things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually, I'll tell you what. Here's a good example of where PTSD comes from, and I just lost my train.
It's okay. You've got time.
He says that he writes that the plane, they got a new plane, they got a different plane today with a different crew. We're all made up of the survivors of the other planes. We don't show each other pictures from home, and we don't talk about our girlfriends. We've learned our lesson.
Wow. I can imagine that. I think I saw some movies in there where it's like they don't talk about anything else except for their jobs, and it just simply say that, heaven help us, may God be with you. That's what it sounds like overall once you get in the tail gunner and also going on those missions. That's what it sounds like.
Right. And in the other one, he ends every date. The dates are all written like Vienna, Austria today, in the air, 7 hours, 55 minutes, lost 2 men, dropped cluster bombs, returning the fighters were tough. We carried the men out of the plane and loaded them in the wagon. Afterwards, I laid in my tent and looked up at the canvas and thought, we go again tomorrow.
Wow. It sounds like pretty much a play-by-play of what happens during war as well, too. Almost like say, day one, this happened, day two, that happened. It almost sounds like a mere play-by-play of what was going on during the war.
Yes, it was. And you can, if you were to look at a map, you'd see how they started in North Africa, jumped to Sicily, Sicily to Italy, Italy to northern Italy, and with each one, the missions got farther. And but in each one, you're right, there's a date, there's an amount of time in where it was and what the target was. And it's just the facts, except for that last sentence, which is always, we go again tomorrow.
Wow, that is something. And of course, according to the diary, what is considered the most difficult day your dad had endured?
Well, that would be a tough one. The most difficult day, he actually does have that in there. Mm-hmm. The most difficult day is once the war was over, they had to wait because there wasn't enough fuel and they had to fly the planes home. So they flew the planes to Africa, and then from Morocco, they were going to fly to Brazil because that was the shortest distance that they could go. And they worked and worked on the plane to make sure that it made it to Brazil. And they flew as they couldn't fly as a whole squadron because they had no way of knowing what the weather was like over the horizon. So they only flew in 9-plane groups. And of the 9 planes that took off from Morocco, only 7 made it. 2 ditched in the ocean and they were lost. And so the last mission that they flew was to come home, and 20% of them didn't make it.
Wow. That is something. And it's in the book, Bless Me, followed by Michael Deeze. We'll talk about the second book, For I Have Sinned. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and Apple. Also on Stitcher, Deezer, and more. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. And listen to The Mike Wagner Show on your iPhone, Alexa, smartphone, Android, your tablet, and also on your desktop or your laptop as well. We're here with Dr. Mike Nelson, best known as author Michael Deeze. He's got the trilogy out, and we talked about Bless Me, Father. That's out on Amazon right now. And we'll get to the second of the trilogy, For I Have Sinned. And it's basically, it continues the journey of both son and father, both damaged by wartime experiences and both afflicted by PTSD. They see their own reflection in the other while searching for their own personal struggles, and just talk about a little bit about the second book.
All right, sir. The second book, For I Have Sinned, is a takeoff on the first book, of course. If you're a raised Irish Catholic, you know that you go to confession at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And speak to the priest, and the opening to that is, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," and then you take it from there. So the first book recounts some of the sins that fathers and sons make with each other, and the second book then talks about how they reconcile. The son resents the father because he sees that he's becoming him, and the father resents the son because he sees that he's becoming him.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing the father wants is for the boy to turn out like he did, and the last thing and the thing that the son wants more than anything else is to be a man of integrity like his father, but he, at the same time, doesn't like who his father is.
Mm-hmm. And do you think PTSD has to do with it? And is like a same level of PTSD, or is it different in those two?
Well, the father is emotionally distant. He learns during the war that everything that he likes, that he cherishes, is taken away from him. He loses his friends. He loses his innocence. And he comes home not able to make emotional connections with anyone. He becomes a hermit in his own house with his own family. The son takes a different route, having grown up in the inner city of Chicago. When he comes back, he's very angry. And he's angry with himself, but he's beset by this recurring nightmare that he relives the experiences that he had in Vietnam. So he takes the dark road, the lower road, and embraces crime.
Mm-hmm.
And becomes very good at it. He becomes a courier and travels wherever there's a tough job, where somebody needs something delivered, no questions asked, for a price, and he's willing to do it. And he's good at it. And he manages to do it even under the worst circumstances. The trouble with it is that the better he gets at it, the stakes of the jobs get higher and higher. And at some point in the book, he realizes that he's gone out on the limb too far, and they're sawing it off behind him. He becomes a patsy for the mob.
Mm-hmm.
And they set him up so that he can take the rap for a pretty heinous crime. And he has no choice but to turn to his father. His father is a pretty tough dude, and he knows how to handle it. And he says in the book, there's a line in the book where he says, "We're Casey's. We handle our own shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to go get my boy."
Mm-hmm. And of course, organized crime was a lot tougher then. And how did he manage to get out of the organized crime?
Well, that's part of the story, and it's part of the excitement toward the end of the second book. So I don't want to give too much away there, but the issue is that there is a drug deal going down. Emmett Casey, the protagonist, is sent to Florida to pick the product up that's coming in through Key West.
Mm-hmm.
And he manages to get through the checkpoints and the other troubles and makes it all the way to Georgia. And in Macon, Georgia, the police catch up with him. They're looking for the shipment. They know it's out there. And so he manages to escape the net that the police have thrown out, but they confiscate the shipment. So the mob has got all the money in the shipment, but they only get a very small portion of the product that was in the vehicle. The rest of it just disappears. And so it's not enough to make them look any farther than whoever was driving the vehicle. And he's left his fingerprints all over the inside of the truck. And of course he has his fingerprints on file just from being in the service. So he knows he's a dead duck with the authorities, but the fact that the shipment is missing too makes him a dead duck with the mob. Mm-hmm. So he can't turn to either one, so he calls his father. His father in turn calls his own brothers, and they go to rescue him.
Wow, that is something as well, too. And, of course, once again, the book For I Have Sinned, along with Bless Me, Father, we have Michael Deeze, the author, as well, too. And we'll talk about the third book, The Heretic, and also his amazing career as well, too, getting out of the Army, Michael Deeze. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and Apple. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're here with Dr. Mike Nelson, best known as author Michael Deeze of the trilogy Bless Me, Father, For I Have Sinned, and The Heretic, also part of the Legacy Project we'll talk about in just a minute as well, too. And also, based on your experience as well, too, that, moving on from the Army, you later became a physician as well, too, of 30-some years. So tell us how you got to be a physician.
In 1978, I had been working as a contract administrator, as an engineer for a company that served the Atomic Energy Commission. They built nuclear power plants all over the world and mostly in the United States. Well, then 3 Mile Island happened, and the Atomic Energy Commission was defunded and dissolved, and I was out of work. I had never gone back to the VA and asked them for anything, but I had been disabled while I was in the service. So I took my disability settlement and my GI Bill and went to college to become a chiropractor because I had had a few mentors that were chiropractors, and they seemed pretty straight-up guys. So I thought that would be a good profession. But to be honest with you, I had never been to a chiropractor, and I didn't know what chiropractic was all about. I couldn't get into medical school. I was too old, and I couldn't pass the MCATs. And the veterinary schools had a long waiting list. So I took the chiropractic college thing, and it's been very good to me.
Amazing. Amazing. And you've done it for so many years as well, too. And you also, also involved in a legacy project as well, too. And why it's so important, let's talk about the legacy project and how you got so interested in it.
The legacy project is a natural outworking of the stories that my father gave me and the story that I hid in the novels that I wrote that bring home the point of how every single person that we know, that we've met, that we are, has those stories to tell. It's a different story than the conversations that you have at the Thanksgiving table.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a different story than we tell when we tell our children, well, you're Irish, so we do these things because we're Irish. That is our heritage, but it's not our legacy.
Mm-hmm.
The stories that are our legacy are the experiences we had that altered our character and made us who we are and helped to explain why we do things a certain way, why we make decisions a certain way, why we made decisions a certain way and do it now. And that legacy we don't get to share very much anymore because we don't talk to each other anymore. We look down at our phones, we watch television, we don't eat around the dinner table like we used to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The generations before us had oral histories where they exchanged lore and how things are done. One of my favorite stories is the Plains Indians had things that they bartered, horses, beadwork, different things like that. But the most precious thing that they had in their family groups or in their tribal groups was a buffalo hide that they passed down from generation to generation. And every year, the group would get together and they would decide what the defining event of that year was that they could use as a depiction and to sort of a jumping off point for telling what their history was. And they would paint that on a buffalo hide so that every year was chronicled in a way that they could key off of. And that was the most precious thing that they had in their group. And it was protected even more than their horses or anything else because it told the story of their people. And we have lost that unless we document it.
Mm-hmm.
So the Legacy Project is to not only put an emphasis on the fact that those stories are important, but also I'm on tour right now doing lectures on this subject, also to teach them how to do it
mm-hmm.
and to show them a way to collect those stories so that they can hand them down when the time comes.
Amazing. I think about the whole Buffalo Project, and I thought to myself, that is just something, a piece of history, and I'm glad you remind me of it. And of course, how do people get involved with Legacy Project, and where can they find it on the website?
I have a website, michaeldeezebooks.com. And the Deeze, by the way, is Deeze, which is important to know. michaeldeezebooks.com, and there's information there about my books, but also about the Legacy Project and where we're going with it and what we're doing. I am pleased at how many people have showed interest in it, and I've been having a really great time with the lectures as they go, and so it's been really good. I would say I use a pen name, Michael Deeze, because my name is Michael Nelson, but my name is Michael D. Nelson. And when my mother found out that I was writing these books, she was so proud, and she told everybody, Michael Deeze got a book. Michael Deeze got a book coming out.
Wow.
Well, she passed away within a month or so of the first book hitting the bookshelves. So I changed my name from Michael Nelson to Michael Deeze because these are Michael Deeze books.
That is amazing. I wonder how you got that name. That's a fantastic story. And, of course, speaking of authors, writing, and everything else, who are some of your favorite authors that you grew up enjoying and reading?
Well, older ones, there are many. One of the things that my parents insisted on was that we read.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things that they ever did was buy a monthly subscription to Author's Digests, they were called, and one came every month. And one book would be James Fenimore Cooper, and another one would be Robert Louis Stevenson, and another one would be Louisa May Alcott. And they expected us to read them, even at a young age. So that's how I got started reading. Nowadays, I love Lee Child, who doesn't? But I also like David Baldacci, and Janet Ivanovich just kills me, so I read her stuff too.
Wow. Sounds like you got a plethora of books that you enjoy reading as well, too, and getting to your third and final book of the trilogy, The Heretic, which is soon to be released in 2020. Just tell us quickly about that, without, of course, giving everything away. So,
well, there's not much to give away in The Heretic. The Heretic, the first two books, by the way, people look at the cover and they go, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." Well, it's a religious book. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell them, no, it's as far away from that as you can get. But because of the religious connotation of "Bless me, Father, and for I have sinned," the third book, The Heretic, addresses that. The heretic means somebody that understands where their faith should be, understands that this is the norm, and turns their back on it, mm-hmm. and walks away. And so the heretic has two or three different connotations in the third book. The first and the easiest one is that, and I do for my own story on this, he becomes a professional and a chiropractor, as a matter of fact, mm-hmm. but he doesn't subscribe to the chiropractic principles of no meds, no nothing, just straightforward adjusting the patient and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. And instead, he embraces taking care of the whole person and becomes an advocate for people, which is heretical to the chiropractic profession. But he's also a heretic because he's a bad man trying to be good, and he's a good man remembering that he was bad. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to turn his back on it, and it sometimes pulls him back.
Mm-hmm. So it pretty much sounds like in The Heretic, it's pretty much he's trying to straighten himself out, but then you got these demons and other struggles that are trying to hold him back. So it sounds like pretty much was like a tug of war in the book.
Yes. and he struggles for his identity, while at the same time trying to embrace the fact that he is a good person, not just a person trying to pretend to be a good person.
Mm-hmm. And I had to say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it incorporates stories that I gathered from small-town rural practice physicians who spent as much time on house calls as they spent in their offices. I practiced for 20 years in the hills of western Wisconsin, in the coulees, they call them,
mm-hmm.
in an Amish neighborhood with 375 Amish families right in the lower level in the bottom part of Monroe County.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even as a chiropractor, I had house calls Tuesdays, Thursdays, and half of Saturdays every week.
Mm-hmm.
And I traveled with a physician's assistant, a PA, and he and I went together. And so we ended up teaching each other an awful lot. He was also a Vietnam vet and also disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot in common.
I have to say that was very unique on how you guys came together, working as a chiropractor and assistant, and also both being the war itself as well, too. And I have to say this, I am very excited to read your books as well, too, since you were named one of the most exciting independent writers for 2018 by Indie Authors Magazine. So that's going to be a really nice award as well for you.
A little unexpected, but I'm certainly grateful. It was pretty neat getting that, especially coming to it this late in life.
Well, the one thing I have to say is that bless you, Michael, for you are an excellent author, and you make me want to read the books and not become a heretic. I mean, you're just fantastic. I got to say that. So, so bless you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mike.
No problem. Okay, so just a couple moments here with author Michael Deeze as well. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, and The Heretic. What do you consider the most defining moment in your writing career?
Having it in my hands and looking at it and realizing that it was a body of work that I hadn't started out to do, and it happened. Sort of like having children, and then all of a sudden they're adults. You don't know how it happened, but you're really glad it did.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it, too. And who do you consider biggest influence in career?
A fellow named Bill Bain was somebody that came to me when I was, how does that line go? You've been down so goddamn long that it looks like up to me.
Mm-hmm.
He was a person of incredible integrity and insight, and saw me for something more than what I did, and gave me a leg up, which changed my life completely. He was an amazing person.
That is amazing, fantastic. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point, especially if they want to become a writer?
I would say start out small, but start out. The hardest thing about it is just writing, because one thought leads to another. And if you just start, you'll always come up with and that reminds me. And then the writing continues.
That sounds like me, it says. Oh, that reminds me. Maybe I just said it a few times, but I'm glad you said it. Author Michael Deeze of Bless Me, Father, for I have sinned, and The Heretic with Dr. Mike Nelson. Mike, thank you very much for your time. You've been fantastic, very exciting and insightful. Once again, tell us about your upcoming projects, what's your website, how do people contact you, and where can they purchase your books?
My book is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and through Outskirts Press of Colorado. My website, michaeldeezebooks.com, Deeze, by the way. And they can also reach me through the Legacy Project on that website, which will direct you further.
Okay, great. Okay, and Mike, just want to say once again a big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Look forward to having you on again soon, and do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love to have you back in 2020.
I would appreciate it, Mike. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm humbled that you asked.
Thanks for listening to The Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.